Hey folks, Gregory Dalpiz, GDP here, coming to you live from Lodi, California for our virtual tasting. Very excited to be here. I've been here since Sunday night, learned a lot of stuff. There's some fascinating stories to be told here, and I've got two great people joining me to help me tell those stories. Tim Hardener, who's the owner and winemaker at Macchia, and Stuart Spencer, who's the program manager, of the Lodi Wine Grape Commission and winemaker at Saint Amant, which I was most familiar with it for their Spencer port, hence the Spencer last name tie-in. So welcome, you guys. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
So it's a great way to lead into things. Great to be here. Where are we? I got to adjust the audio for 1 second. So I'm just going to show a little bit of a map. So we're in Lodi, California. What is that about? It typically takes about 90 minutes to get here from San Francisco, give or take?
Yeah, it's almost due east of San Francisco. If you follow the delta back from underneath the Golden Gate Bridge, you can see exactly where we are.
And here's a little map with an idea of where the delta is. And Lodi, the town, is within the blue sort of square block there. But we're gonna get back to that. One of the first things that I've learned about Lodi, which is really fascinating, and I think it touches both of you guys, is Lodi is what are people from Lodi called? Lodinians? Lodian? Lodi is about people from Lodi, and it's not just about people from Lodi. It's families from Lodi. I was really impressed by the amount of history, the amount of continuity, the amount of just family that's here. It seems like almost every grape grower, winemaker is third generation, fifth generation. It's all about, this is what you guys have been doing. This is not some upstart neighborhood.
The family farms are definitely a way of life around here.
Yeah, and you look at it, Lodi's been growing grapes going back to the 1850s when people first started coming to California for the gold rush. Many people came out here looking for gold and went broke, and a few of them started growing grapes and making wine down here in Lodi to keep the miners well quenched. Yeah, keep them happy. So, it's got a long history, and just recently in the last couple of decades, you've really seen an emerging winery scene as these growers have turned from growing wine grapes for others to making their own wines.
So, like I said, there's a lot of stories to tell, and we're going to talk about some of the families and all that and the history. I think most people, when they hear Lodi, they think of Zinfandel. There's a lot of old vines in here. They think of Petit Syrah. But I think one of the really exciting things about Lodi is it seems to be just wide open, willing to experiment. There's a lot of very interesting things going on. Italian varietals, which you're playing with. It's important in your portfolio. Iberian varietals. So I want to make sure that we get things started and get our thirsts quenched in a timely manner. So we're going to kick off the tasting with a little, pass it around, Uvaggio Vermentino. And this wine, this project really sort of embraces a lot of what Lodi is about. This is a $14 suggested retail price wine. Got a bottle shot here or a label shot somewhere. I'll have to dig that up. It seemed to have dropped off my radar. There it is. There's a label shot. So this is what a lot of Lodi is all about. Really friendly wines for. I think I heard this several times today. Other regions can have Saturday night. You'll take the other 6, right?
That's exactly right. You can have those high-dollar special wines on your Saturday evening or your anniversaries, but we'll take the other 6 nights of the week and have you drink bottles of Vermentino like this, or Zinfandel, or Petit Syrah, or Sangiovese, or whatever your preference. We can do many things here.
So Vermentino, is this something that either of you guys are familiar with, how much is being grown here, when it was put in the ground, how's it doing in general?
Yeah, I think when you look at this particular wine, the Uvaggio Vermentino, it's been the passion of Jim Moore, who is the winemaker and owner of this brand. And Jim, for many years, was the winemaker for Robert Mondavi's Italian line of wines, and he really was interested in Italian varieties and partnered with some growers and planted these vineyards about 10 years ago. So he's really kind of led the effort in Vermentino in California, and and has shown that you can make a really nice light styled white with this variety in this region.
Yeah, I think that's what we're experimenting with right now is maybe we weren't really known as the capital for white wine grapes. Like you said, people recognize us with a Zinfandel character maybe. But a lot of these varieties are growing in climates that are almost identical to what we have here.
That's another story. I mean, there's a lot to learn about Lodi. I've thought I had a little bit of a handle on things, but you speak about climate, and we have this wine here, which I think speaks to a certain extent about climate. You don't think of Lodi when you think of a light, crisp white wine. You tend to think light, crisp white wines come from cool coastal climates, and Lodi definitely has a reputation as being a hot place.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is the reputation is a little bit of misinformation and misunderstanding. I mean, Lodi sits directly east of the San Francisco Bay, and so during the growing season, as temperatures warm up in the valley, all this cool air spills in off of the San Francisco Bay, across the delta, and right into the region, creating a distinct climate here in the Appalachian that you don't see north and south of here. And it creates, I think manifests itself in the wines with a freshness and a really kind of beautiful forward fruitiness to them as well.
And when you say north and south, I forget that somebody today mentioned that there's about a 15-mile corridor where those delta breezes really are strongest, and it's just the prime part of this area for grape growing.
You can absolutely notice that. I know personally you can drive between here and say Sacramento, which is a half hour north of us, and somewhere in that distance you're going to find that everything changes. What crops are grown out there, even the natural flora and fauna. The oak trees kind of dry up and get a little bit more scraggly, where if you look around our Appalachian everywhere, everything just seems to be fertile. And we also have the McCollum River running right through the heart of our valley as well.
So it's a pretty interesting and diverse place. And I think if I remember correctly, there's 60 varieties that are commercially grown.
Yeah, I think because it's got a very warm Mediterranean climate, there's this broad diversity of varieties that do really well here. And over the last couple of decades, we've seen a lot of experimentation with these varieties, and they may not be as well known as a Chardonnay or Merlot, but they make delicious wines, and they are often at a great value, and they're doing very well here.
And just hi Napa girl, I did go to Heritage Oaks today. I had lunch at Heritage Oaks. I took a walk through the vineyards, down to the river, saw the bluffs, saw part of the potential restoration projects of wildlife corridors that they're building. So it was definitely a fascinating part of my day, and that's where I got a significant part of the color I'm sporting tonight. I started out a paler shade this morning. It is, I don't know what it's like in the rest of the country, but the weather here, I'm told this is like a typical summertime day. It was cool and fresh this morning. It was probably, I don't know how hot, 92?
Maybe 92.
Yeah.
Maybe 92. It was hot. It was fairly dry, though. It didn't seem humid at all today. Is that typical?
Yeah, this is it's a little on the warm side for this time of year, but it's fairly typical. We have a fairly dry climate here, which is good for the grapes, and it's often breezy and windy at this time of year as well, too, and we've had a fair bit of wind the last 2 days.
So it's a dry climate, but you guys have unusual, maybe just for California, but unusual access to water. Water's not, it doesn't seem to be a big issue for you guys.
No more than it is anywhere else in California. We do have abundant sources of it, but just because we have them right now doesn't mean other people aren't trying to get them.
You have them right now. So do you guys typically have your own wells?
Where we live, yes, we are off of a well.
Most of the vineyards, though, I mean, you have some of the vineyards are in various irrigation districts. So the vineyard we're out today is part of the Woodbridge Irrigation District. It goes back 100+ years, and they have water rights along the McCollum River. We have on the eastern side another irrigation district that moves water about, and then a lot of the vineyards are on well water as well. One of the things, over the last decade, though, over the last 2 decades, there's been this broad transition from traditional furrow irrigating to drip irrigation, and that's allowed the growers to be much more efficient in the use of water, as well as give the vines exactly what they need.
Sure. So that going from furrow to drip irrigation, how much water does that save? You figure, percentage-wise, cut it down by 60%.
At least, yeah. I mean, it's a huge savings in water.
So that's just one of the very small things that make up the Lodi's very forward-thinking and ahead of the curve in the whole sustainability practice. You've got this program of rules, Lodi rules, that really serve as a framework and a model for sustainability for the rest of the state, if not the rest of the country's grape growing.
Yeah, we started our sustainable program, which was called an integrated pest management program, over 20 years ago. It started out with a simple, tailgate meetings with growers and introducing several different practices, and it's manifested itself over the years into our certification program now, where we have over 20,000 acres, certified sustainable Lodi rules for sustainable wine growing that certifies growers on a whole range of practices, from human resources to ecosystem management to water use to soil.
And the farmers are good people. They're not going to go out and rape their lands. Like you said, it's been passed down already from generation to generation. So it's kind of a family practice to take care of the land, because they plan on passing it down to the next generations as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things you take away immediately, that there might be some corporate efficiencies in some of these operations, because I'm surprised, these are some big operations, a lot of acreage, but it's you drive into one of these places and they say, yeah, that's the house my grandfather built in 1905. That's the house my son was raised in. That's the house I grew up in. It's kind of that people are not going to take that for granted.
Yeah, and even if it's say 1,000-acre site, there is still owl boxes out there. There's still wetland restorations as part of the projects generally. So yeah, they're very forward-thinking farmers.
So I'm going to go to a couple of questions. First, Bob Fike wants to know, do you guys irrigate?
I think when you look across the region, I mean, it's a grower by grower specific thing, but yeah, most of the growers do irrigate, and like I said, most of them are using drip irrigation now. A lot of even our really old vineyards have installed underground drip irrigation in the vineyards too, and allows them, to not only irrigate, but they can add fertilizer and things like that to the
direct
vines.
To the roots.
Yeah,
it's actually interesting. I was going to ask, and I just want to mention it so we get back to it. How come I don't see more buried drip as opposed to above ground drip? Because part of the water conservation, you would use less. I interrupted you though, Tim.
No, I think the farmers would use that because, I mean, they like to see how. I mean, they were historically irrigating, just so they could see the water go through their crops. They could see how much they're putting on there. They could see when it has all been absorbed by the land. So maybe it's just something that they just like to see, the water dripping down onto their plants.
I want to make sure that it's working.
Make sure they're getting what they think they are.
The only reason I laugh is because I have farmers in my family, and it's a very farmer kind of thing. I don't trust it. I want to see it. It's okay.
On the flip side of it, though, the coyotes like to chew on the drip lines when they're above ground, and that's a big
suckle on
challenge.
them a little bit.
They'll bite holes in it, and you'll find all sorts of breaks in irrigation lines from coyotes that can be quite a headache. So,
do coyotes eat grapes
when they're ripe?
When they're ripe, because I didn't see another thing that I thought was a little surprising. No fence. There's no fencing. There's no deer fencing. There's no fencing at all.
Nearly the pressures they would do where there's hills and more cover for deers, but there is a significant amount of turkeys running around our area in the outer foothills, and the birds get their fair share as well.
I can imagine. So let's see. I just want to go. Benito on wine wonders how many bottles of this Uvaggio end up in the Italian section of wine shops. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, Vermentino is definitely unusual outside of Sardinia, Liguria, Tuscan coast, a little bit farther in the south of Italy. It's a very typical grape there, so I think a lot of people would be surprised that it's growing outside of Italy, and in Lodi, it's even more surprising. Colleen wonders if there's any Muscat in this wine, or how similar Vermentino is to Muscat. Muscat is much more floral. Vermentino's typically a very mineral lemon wine, lighter in bodied. I don't think there's any Muscat in here, but I have tasted dry and sweet still Muscats here. And I think with the Italian heritage...
And Jim Moore, actually, with Huvaggio, makes both a dry and a sweet Muscat, and his dry one is really nice wine. It wouldn't surprise me if, he has a very small percentage blended into here.
Stuck it in?
But, that's like, one of the wine tricks winemakers like to do is, tinker around with the edges a little bit.
Just a little bit of spice.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of, this is an area that was founded by Germans and Italians, and you can tell, I was told the first visit or two, maybe, had heard a lot of Italian influence, and then you drive down the east side and road after road after road was in German name. So you learn very quickly that there were Germans. There was a German camp, maybe an Italian camp, but because of the Italians and their requirement for wine, where Muscat's always a common backyard vine for home winemaking in the area.
They've been grown to a lesser extent here. I think you've seen more of them a little bit down south. Some of them were done just for table grape eating type of varieties too. I think you've seen a lot more Muscat planted in the last, several years as kind of Moscatos have really taken off, and so there's more interest in it right now than there has been in quite some time.
Yeah, who doesn't like Muscat?
There are a couple of people. Dry Muscat's a hard sell. You got to give kudos to people who are trying to make dry Muscat. It's not the easiest thing to sell.
No.
That's beautiful wine. In the summertime with seafood, it's fantastic. So, Mike, elevation is 50. We're about 50 feet above sea level. That's
right. Yeah.
Right here we are. But as you travel throughout the district, you go from the west to the east, it'll rise up a little bit. Maybe another 100 feet or 200 feet. So
you get up in these. Somebody called the toes of the foothills.
The toes of the Sierra Nevada. So
they get up to about 150 feet?
Yeah, give or take. And it's, it can be pretty diverse topography up there. You have some rolling hills, very much a cobblestone soils. You want to be careful driving your tractor up there because if you get on the wrong side of the hill, you're rolling
over?
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
Do either of you guys know why Vermentino was planted here, or is this... there's just so many different varieties planting here. Was this just...
I think you're going to see some farmers who they'll plant what they can sell, and then they also want to grow what they want that will grow well here. So there's a group of people that will say, well, this is just like the same topography as my area back home, and this was my favorite grape, so I'm going to try to plant maybe a row or an acre of it here or there and just to see how it turns out. Some of it might not be so good and you might not ever hear of it again, but the Vermentino seems to be one that's starting to take a foothold here.
Absolutely. And it's a beautiful wine. It is, it fits a place, I think, roughly between Sauvignon Blanc and Pinot Grigio. Pinot Grigio tends to be innocuous, a lot of it. Sauvignon Blanc, very assertive, and a lot of people, I think, are looking for white wine that has a good character, maybe not as assertive and grassy as Sauvignon Blanc. This is just a beautiful, relatively light, crisp style, citrusy, fresh white wine for summer. Very impressed with the Vermentino here. Let's see, one more question, and then we're going to move on to the next wine. I had a question for Tim, and now I forgot it. So we're going to take a question from the audience. Andrea Bose, someone know, does any of these wines exported to South America?
This particular wine I don't think is exported to South America. I know he does sell some in Canada, and I know he does sell some in Europe. I'm sure he would love to connect with anyone in South America that wanted to bring it in, though.
So just to repeat, if anybody wants to bring any of these wines into South America, just call Stuart. We'll give you the phone number at the end of the broadcast. The thing that you touched on, I don't know how we touched on it, but it was interesting to hear from several people that they started making wine sort of as a marketing effort to promote the grapes that they were selling.
Sure.
And it's
the farmers think that the wineries are making all the money, and the wineries think that the farmers are making it all. But it's good for our area to have people that are like that, because then if the farmer thinks that the finished product is when the grapes leave the vineyard, when they acknowledge that, hey, that's just the start of their journey, they've got to turn into something else. They got to turn into wine. So they realize that they're not just grape growers anymore, they're wine growers, that they're trying to grow this bottle of wine and not just send grapes off to join your neighbors in some big giant tank somewhere. So it's just nice to have a little bit more control over them. And then you think that owner of that vineyard, he's going to have to stand behind the counter, or he's going to want to promote his vineyard. You think he's going to do a little bit better job. So it kind of lifts the whole, a nice tide rises all boats.
So yeah, he's got his name on something.
Right.
He's all of a sudden thinking, wow, I could do better than this.
If you're standing behind a tasting bar, let me tell you, it's way easier listening to people compliment you about your wine than it is to watch them spit it out.
And I think it's a great segue into your wine, the Amorous Sangiovese. So you only work with growers. You only buy fruit. You don't own vineyards. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience, how long you've been making wine, how your relationships have gone with growers since you kicked everything off?
Well, we've been a bonded winery for 11 years now. And before that, I worked at several other wineries in the area and even up in the Sierra foothills. And before that, I was a home winemaker. Who doesn't love to have a hobby that you can go home and taste? Drink all that, so they had to help me out there. But when we started Macchia Winery, we knew that we didn't have any vineyards, and we knew we wanted to specialize in, say, Old Vine Zinfandel. And you couldn't go out and buy a 100-year-old vineyard, but you could buy grapes from those special places. So that's kind of where we decided to go. And then I also had a passion for some of the Italian wines that I've tasted. So we had to have some Sangiovese, we had to have Barberas. So it just kind of evolved from there.
And these were the Sangiovese, the Barbera. They were out there, ready to be sold, to be purchased.
Not as much as, say, Cabins Inn is around here, and you really had to look for them. I actually had to wait a few years till I got a reputation, maybe making some wines that growers would like to associate with me. But after that, I've got the growers that I work with. I'll buy the whole vineyard of the grapes from them now. And they'll ask me, what do you think we should do out here? How do we think we should do this? So while we don't own any vineyards, I actually feel like I own about 20 of them because I'm putting my footprints everywhere in the appellation.
So what are you looking for? It's actually, it's kind of interesting because another thing that I've learned about Lodi, a lot of the vineyards are big estates, big blocks. So a lot of people are working in one or two spots, and this is a gigantic appellation. So you're working 20 different spots in the appellation. Can you talk a little bit about the diversity that you find here?
Yeah, if it is a big vineyard, then I will probably set aside a block or some rows, and we'll try to farm it a little bit different. I'll usually pay them a little bit more for it. I try to make sure that they're going to be in business year after year, so my growers are among the highest paid in the appellation. But I also demand a lot more from them. I'll say, I'll pay you just what you got for, say it was an acre. I'll pay you for this acre what you get for this acre, but we're going to go out and drop half the fruit. So they think I'm crazy because I can get more money if I had more wine, but I think my passion is making the very best wine that we can do and kind of showing them the ways and the whys of how we make good wine. And then getting back to the different growing areas, Lodi, if you go to the west, you've got basically sea level. You've got delta right there, and that delta just drains right out into the bay. And then if you go up a little bit further, you've got very, very rocky soil. It's red decomposed granite, and it's very different than what you get on the west side of Lodi. Same thing with the weathers. If you're on the west side, you're going to get the cool delta breezes more often, and you're going to get them more intense. When you get back to the east side, rolling hills again, so everything has to be on drip if you want to water it. And the soils are not nearly as fertile out there as they are throughout the valley.
So out of the different appellations that make up, or the sub-appellations in Lodi, are you working, which ones are you working in?
I actually have vineyards in every single one of them.
Wow.
The vast majority are in the McCollum AV8. They're just kind of a more established appellation, but you know, the further north you go, you just get different styles, and that's what fascinates me, especially in the Zinfandel branch, where I can make 10 different Zinfandels exactly the same way, and they're going to taste different just because of where they came from.
It's kind of exciting as a winemaker to you're painting with different colors.
Absolutely, yeah. And like you said, our appellation is one of the larger ones, so you can't really just paint the whole thing with a big broad brush because there is so many microclimates or just the way we grow things here or the soil types.
And when we say big, we're talking it's 50 miles.
It's about 50 miles probably from north to south. There's 100,000 acres of wine grapes in total in the region. So, and 750 growers. So it's a fairly significantly sized area.
So 100,000 acres, bigger than Sonoma and Napa combined.
Just to help production,
put it into perspective. So we had a question here. Bob Fike wants to know how long the grapes macerated for the Sangiovese. Can you talk a little bit about the production process?
When we do Sangiovese, if there is one thing that winemakers will stress about is getting the color out of Sangiovese and getting the extraction that you need to get some of the flavors, let Sangiovese give you its true full potential. So we will crush the grapes at the crusher. We will cold soak them from overnight to 3 days, depending on the maturity level of them. And then we will start them off with imported Italian yeast. And the fermentation, we try to keep cool, but it can get up to 85 degrees. So you do get extraction that way. We also then will extended maceration for, we like to do it for 5 days, but sometimes a little bit less than that, depending on what's going on else in harvest. Mm-hmm. And what we try to do when we pick them, say we'll have a vineyard, we'll have a block of it. Sometimes we'll just pick the sunny side of the vine that's getting more exposure because those grapes will be ripe. Where there's been years where we haven't even picked the other side of the vine, of the same vine, for 2 more weeks because their sugar levels haven't matured and their color just hasn't came through yet.
That brings up an interesting point. The majority of the vines here are oriented east-west to take advantage of the delta breezes.
Right.
So you have a north-facing side, and a south-facing side, as opposed to you see a lot of east-west, a lot of north-south orientation with east-west sides that tend to ripen more in a more similar pattern than that north side.
Yeah, there's plus minuses to planting your vineyard in any direction. You know, if you plant it so that the sunlight is more beneficial to your vineyard, then maybe you don't take advantage of the winds and vice versa. So you just try to maximize what you think is going to grow the best grapes.
And what's your favorite food pairing for this? We have a question out there.
If you're going to drink Sangiovese, you should be eating Italian food, and it goes good with any pasta dish. I think maybe veal parmesan.
There you go. Where's the best place to get it in Lodi?
Pietro's
Trattoria?
Kettleman Lane.
I drove past there. Oh, it looked good. The parking lot, it was busy. One kind of interesting thing about this wine, it says 15.5, and alcohol levels big point of discussion amongst wine geeks, and to a certain extent, I tend to fall on the side that lower tends to be better. But one of the interesting things here seems to be that ultimately balance is the best. And a lot of these wines that have 15.5 certainly don't feel like they have 15.5. I think just the accumulated warmth of the area gives you balanced grapes with higher sugars in other regions, other areas around here. So I was impressed by your wines and some other producers. You taste them and then you go to the label and it says 15.5 or 16, and it really does not seem to be the same as a 15 or a 15.5 from someplace else where they're not getting this balance, this combination of ripeness, physiological ripeness, and just
Well, kudos to you
innate.
for drinking first and looking at labels second, because that's important. People can have a preconceived notion of this is just too hot, and I've had discussions with a lot of people, but it's not Chianti. It's Lodi, and to get the grapes to have the maximum flavor, which means they get the wine to have the maximum flavor and mouthfeel and color and all the other things we associate with quality wine. Here, in the way Macchia makes wines, we feel that the extra hang times is a benefit, and it outweighs some of the early picking decisions, which would lower your alcohol level.
Sure, sure. It's it's easy to say, oh, you should make wines with lower alcohol, and some winemakers are able to craft a wine that has lower alcohol that performs very well. But ultimately, you're in a place where you have a lot of sun, you have a lot of here. It's heat accumulation instead of heat spikes, evidently.
Right.
But so your fruit is going to get ripe. There's a little question. Again, people think that Lodi is a hot region, but most people I've spoken to have said it's really not hot in the sense that it gets really hot. It's just warm for a long period of time, and you get you get the sugar accumulation because the grapes are really thriving in this climate. So if you could talk a little bit about the climate and how it's warm and not hot.
I think one of the distinguishing things is the nighttime temperatures. Because we're next to the delta, as I talked about earlier, we'll get our nighttime temperatures drop into the 50s very often during the growing season. So that kind of retains the acidity and the freshness in the wines. And then, but the delta effect also moderates the high. So we often, especially on the west side, you don't see as large of a diurnal temperature swing as you see on some of the other sides. So it manifests itself in the wines in a very kind of plush fruitiness that really appeals to a lot of customers, and it comes with ripeness so you get the higher alcohols, but it often doesn't show because there's a lot of fruit there that's just balancing it all out.
And I think even if you looked at the classic Chianti wines, when they declare some of their best vintages, typically they are the warmer vintages where the fruit actually gets riper than, say, it normally would in an average year there.
Sure.
So, it's probably a good thing for them as well.
One thing that I've noticed tasting the wines this year, tasting the wines over the past several years, it seems like the winemaking has changed as well. It seems like there was an effort in the past. There might have been a mindset, we have really ripe fruit, we can make really big wines, let's extract them, let's make the powerhouse wines. And the wines that I've been tasting this week in particular show a lot more finesse than the wines
I think one of the challenges is that often California and Lodi gets pigeonholed into one style because what may be more readily available out in the market is a wine of that style. And what you've been able to see here is this huge diversity of wines that are being made and grown that unfortunately right now are on the shelf in New York. And so the winemaking style is evolving, but there's a lot of things out there that just, reflect the diverse styles of winemakers in the area.
Yeah.
So one thing that's really important for the area, for getting wines on shelves outside of the area, is tourism. And Robin Giesling had asked, and the question disappeared, is there a tourism board in Lodi? Is there somebody promoting tourism?
Well, one of our key efforts is tourism with the Wine Commission, and LodiWine.com is a great resource for visiting the area on wine.
Robin, LodiWine.com, and actually, your website is one of the best websites for a wine geek that I've found, because you go there and they have a weather thing, a weather page, and the top half is, I think, current weather, and the bottom half is not designed for me, it's designed for the grape growers. So you have all this information you can look at, and it's really, really informative. And then there the Vineyard Views page,
Yep, yeah.
where they're all, again, these are not designed for consumers, these were designed for grape
We've
growers.
actually got 18 weather stations out in vineyards right now, and we kind of accumulate all that information, distribute it out to all the growers, and so it's taking actual readings in the vineyards as opposed to in town where it's can be quite different microclimate.
So there's just a ton of information there really very, very rich. You can spend a lot of time going through it, and it's a lot of fun if you're as geeky as I am, and you really want to learn about the region and what's happening here.
Yeah, and then we have events every maybe quarter. If there's some time of the year that they were going to be coming here, I'm sure that we will have something going on here to show off ourselves.
There was an event that was it just recently an event?
We have our big event coming up in 2 weeks is the Zinfest, which is wine, food, and fun at Lodi Lake, and we the main festival on Saturday.
It's April 18th?
It's May.
Or May 18th?
Yeah,
May 18th. April.
Yeah.
It's May 1st today,
so we bring in. We'll have about 5,000 people show up that day, and we have a wine school, a cooking school. We have about 40 to 50 wineries pouring. We have live entertainment stage with music.
We have many different kinds of foods, and you can come to one place and walk around. And most of the Lodi wineries are represented there. So rather than go to their tasting rooms, we're going to come to you. You just spend the day walking around beautiful Lodi Lake and enjoy everything that we have to offer here.
So Mike Medallo's asked, why plant Sangiovese in a climate like this? I guess he feels that the climate is probably too warm for Sangiovese.
I don't know, Chianti, there's certain areas of Chianti that are fairly warm as well, I would say. And I also make a Sangiovese from another appellation where it is cooler, and many times we struggle to ripen the grapes. I mean, to the point where the vineyard owner is placing reflective material on the base of the ground to let the sun hit it and reflect up underneath the grapes, just so that we can get them ripened to what I would consider normal Italian ripening
sugar levels.
Yes.
So that's the answer to that. Let's see. Make or anyone trying Nero d'Avola, Aglianico? Is there anything else here? Fiano in Lodi.
I know there are a few Aglianicos, and I think there's probably some Nero d'Avola planted. I haven't tasted any wines from it. It kind of gets to why plant Sangiovese and why plant Aglianico. It's just kind of the innovative spirit that kind of percolates through the growers. Yeah, and they're going to try things, and some things are going to work, and some are not. And some may make great wines and have no market for them, but they still may make great wines.
And you never know unless you plant them. I heard yesterday that my family's from Trentino in Italy. Tiraldigo is the most important red grape there. Unusual. I mean, I've tasted most of them that were planted in California and any place else. And I heard yesterday that they're putting in 5,000 acres of Tiraldigo here.
Yeah, that's
what I heard.
I don't know if it's quite 5,000, but one of the things we've seen over
some winemaker told me that.
One of the things we've seen over the last decade or so is a lot of the larger wineries are looking at some of these varieties as what they call their spice box wines. And so they're ways of blending it into a Cabernet, a California appellated Cabernet, and it just adds a really unique character and layer of complexity that makes a $10 Cabernet a better wine.
Just like a $20 Cabernet. It's very interesting. John Thorson has a question. Is there one variety that you guys think gives the best value in Lodi as compared to other regions? And it's kind of interesting because maybe it's a variety that has a little spice box action added in there.
Well, just about every variety, when you buy it from Lodi, would be a value compared to the other appellations. But me, I'm a Zin guy, so I got to say, if you're going to spend the money on a good Zin, you can spend a lot of money and still not get a good Zin in some areas, and then you don't have to spend a lot of money here in Lodi to get a very good Zin. We've got plenty of old vines. We've got great Zin character coming through in the winemaking styles that we're using here. I would have to say would be my favorite.
Driving around yesterday, the day before, you guys have some absolutely gorgeous old vine Zinfandel vineyards. I took some pictures, and it's amazing the size of some of these vines. Some of these plants are this was as tall as me. They're just absolutely gigantic. And then this one on the right, that's a 6-foot tall plant. It was probably more than 6 foot, towered over me. These were ancient. I mean, I don't know how old these are, but they're obviously very old Zin vines.
We have
absolutely thriving though.
We have hundreds, if not thousands, of acres turn of the last century, early 1900s, 1920s. One of the vineyards we're in this morning was 1870s, I believe. And they're all in these really sandy soils, so phylloxera doesn't do well, and they've been able to survive on their own roots for 100 plus years.
So we're going to pass around a Zin. We have the Clinker Brick Old Vine Zin. Just to quickly go back, the Uvaggio Vermentino suggested retail price was $14. The Macchia Amorous Sangiovese was $22, and now we're hitting the Clinker Brick, $19 suggested retail price. Lodi appellated American Oak. I'm just reading this down. Old Vine Zinfandel.
I think the Clinker Brick Zin is kind of the quintessential Lodi Zinfandel. It's one of the Zins that's more widely available out there. They have a very distinct style that is Lodi is known for, the riper style, the big fruit, and they've had a lot of success with it. And Steve Felton, the owner of it, has been a long time grower, and they launched this wine company about 10, 12 years ago, and just making great wines.
So this is classic Lodi Zin, big, opulent, plush style.
It's kind of what Lodi can do really well and is known for. I think, as you noted earlier, there's more diversity in the styles of winemaking going on now, so you can see lighter styles of Zins being done as well. Steve has some beautiful old vineyards that he sources from to make some fairly intense Zins.
So I heard repeatedly there's a bit of a competition or competitiveness here. East Side Lodi versus West Side Lodi, and depending on whose winery you're at, East Side is best or West Side is best. But everybody has said that there really is a difference in the Zins that come from the East Side and the West Side. Do you agree with that? Can you tell us what the difference is?
I think that they will talk about that, but I source grapes from both sides, and so I am partial to both sides. But just like you said, one tastes like this and one tastes like this. It doesn't mean one's better or one's worse. You could find something that you like here. That's the point that I think should be taken away from that. And the competitiveness is kind of just playfulness.
I'm sure. I would say, I'm going to guess, it's just guessing, it's about 83% playfulness and 17%.
That's probably a good number.
Yeah, 17% I want to make a better wine than that guy on the other side.
But that's a good thing, too. So if your neighbor gives you kind of a little challenge or a little ribbing and he won some good awards or got some good scores, hey, that makes me want to beat him next year at the same game so I can rib him a little harder. So guess what? This good-hearted ribbing is actually lifting an entire appellation.
I think it touches on one of the things that really sets Lodi apart is it's got a great sense of community and support, and we all work together to help each other. Whether it's borrowing equipment or tasting the wines and providing honest feedback, and you don't see that in other areas as much as you see here. It's just in all aspects of it, from the grape growing to the winemaking. It's very much a community effort.
I think that plays into a question here we have from Advice Sister A, who wants to know a little bit more about the Lodi Wine Grape Commission, what their mission is. And this is, you can explain it better than I can, obviously, but this is a self-imposed assessment on growers to support your efforts.
So not to get too technical here, but the Wine Grape Commission was established in 1991. Two fundamental goals: one, to market the region, and the other to conduct grower-related research, to do research in the district that benefited Lodi growers. And so we do assess or tax growers on an annual basis, and it's a mandatory tax, and they willingly contribute to it, and we come up for renewal every 5 years, and so we have to demonstrate that we're providing value, and we've had a lot of success at it.
And your job is to promote Lodi.
The region. Yeah, and one of the things we're first funded by the growers and not the vintners. We have a mechanism by which the vintners provide some support too, but the growers, when they look at a brand, it's the region is their brand as opposed to Macchia or Uvaggio. And so growers in general are more interested in elevating the whole region, and in the long run they'll benefit from that.
Yeah, I think the commission has done an extremely good job creating a sense of community where we do help each other out with scientific knowledge, with, like you said, sharing of the equipment or whatever it is. It is a community, and it's a community that we realize that we sink or swim by what happens here. So everybody does seem to get along, and everybody does seem to be going in the same direction.
Which is, it's a great thing. It's great to have that community support. Everybody's in the same boat. Everybody wants to get or go in the same direction, even if their final destination is a little different. They're all working together.
If I get a kudos on a wine or something, I don't get people calling me saying, "Where'd you get that? What did you?" It's like, it's a congratulations. It's a pat on the back. And when I know I do good, I go pat my farmers on the back and deliver wine to his table and say, "Hey, you just won a gold medal.
You won a gold medal. What are you going to do next? Go to Disneyland."
Going to Disneyland.
So is this aged in American oak? According to my text sheet, the clinker brick is aged for 14 months in American oak. How does the character of the grape change as the wine ages, or as the vine ages? Which is a great question. What's the difference between old vine Zin and regular Zin?
Go ahead.
Fight it out.
No, you both know.
A vine is kind of like a person. When you're young and dumb, you run around and do all kinds of stupid things, and when you get older, you're a little wiser and a little more
a little grumpy,
a little more self-regulating.
No, they are self-regulating. Just like he said, if you're 50 years old, you know how much fruit you can ripen. You've been doing it every year for the last 50 years. You don't throw out all these giant kings because that's a waste of time. You know you can make it through a heat spell. You know you can do this and that. So they're just more regulated. When you say you like balanced wines, the old vines are a more balanced commodity.
I would agree. And here's an interesting thing. Let's talk a little bit. This is a 10. Let's talk about 2010, 2011 vintages, the most recent vintages that people are likely to encounter at retail. Tell us a little bit about the character of the two vintages.
Both Tim and I make wines from two different regions, and I grow grapes in another region as well. And 10 was both 10 and 11 were beautiful years for Lodi for the most part. A lot of the vineyards came off in mid to early September, very cool years. So we got really nice freshness in the wines, good ripeness. Low yields before the October rains came in that really affected other parts of California. And so I felt the 2010 and 2011 wines were pretty strong from the region.
Yeah, from all of the years that I've been making wine, that goes back about 20 years, it's easily the best vintage. Maybe not for California, because I have a lot of friends in other areas that were complaining. But for us, I'll take those 2 years any year.
Complaining. There's a lot of complaining. The wines, to me, seem to. Maybe it's. I spoke before about maybe the wine, asking if the winemaking is changing a little bit. But those two vintages seem to me to be more elegant, more balanced. I mean, they were beautiful, beautiful expressions.
Yeah, they had much more natural acidity in 2010 and 2011 from the cool season, and they just made really nice, fresh.
Our jobs was the easiest it's ever been.
Don't screw it up.
The day we picked it to the day we bottle it, they literally seemed to make themselves, and that made our jobs just unbelievably easy.
Andrea Bose asked, why is the alcohol so high? I'm assuming he's talking about the clinker brick, which I have 15.8 on the text sheet.
It's right in the wheelhouse for Lodi Zinfandel.
And it's their style. I mean, you can make another one, but they've had a lot of success with this style. There's a lot of customers out there that like that style of Zin, and it has no trouble getting the ripeness to it.
So now we're going to move on to the next wine, the Michael David Petit, 85% Petit Syrah, 15% Petit Verdot, with a label that's definitely appears to be very Lodi. There are two elephants with dancing mice, and it's a wine that doesn't seem to be, taking itself too seriously.
That is definitely a Michael David product.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I think you have to give Michael David credit. I mean, they also produce Seven Deadly Zins, which was one of the first real breakout wines for the region, and that originally started as 7 different vineyards that went into it back in the early 2000s, and it's just been year after year success with it, and it's created a platform for them to create wines like this, which is Petite Syrah, which is another variety that does very well in our soils here, along with a whole portfolio of wines they do. And this wine, I think, demonstrates their distinct style as well too.
So Jay Trika asked, Lodi is known for Zins. What is the best underappreciated varietal from Lodi? And this, I saved that question because for me, I'm a big fan of Petite Syrah. And as I said earlier, I tend to like things with a little less alcohol, and Petite when it's really ripe. This is 14.5. This is probably just where it should be. I mean, I'm guessing you guys would know better, but this is the kind of wine I think is underappreciated.
Petite Syrah would be a perfect representative of that statement, or would be something that he's looking for, because you might not see a ton of Petite Syrah labeled wines, but it's in an awful lot of wines, and it's in an awful lot of wines because it is a variety that grows here very well.
What does it do to the wine? Why is it added to wines?
Petite Syrah can add a little structure, a little backbone to wines that might be lacking in that, and probably the biggest contribution that Petite Syrah makes to wines is color.
Yeah, this is
when you
black purple.
Crush Petite Syrah grapes, it looks like you were a mechanic on an oily engine, because your hands are just black. They stain everything.
I think one of the neat things with Petite Syrah is that in some areas it can get a little too rusticy or a little too structured, where here you have this plush fruit that kind of balances out the underlying structure of the wine well.
Going back to Zin, Bob Fike is asking, Zin grapes, how long does Zin take to mature here, and does that contribute to the alcohol? It obviously contributes to the alcohol in that you're waiting for sugars to accumulate, but is Zin a later harvest here than other regions?
Whenever I pick Zin from this appellation, I never have to worry about sugars. I do check them just so I don't have any surprises, but in Lodi, we're probably one of the first districts to pick Zinfandel of the major districts in the wine growing regions. I know we'll be completely done with Zinfandel before I pick one single Zinberry from the Sierra foothills.
Oh, interesting. Big difference.
It usually starts, some of the drier farmed, lower yielding Zin vineyards will start around Labor Day sometimes. And then most of the red Zin is finished up hopefully by the end of September. Last year was a little different, but that's kind of average.
Yeah, I would say, right. Stuart's perfect on that, because the Zinfandels ripen up. Usually they let us get out of August, but that'll depend on the vintage.
Just barely?
Sometimes just barely.
So Zin and Chard, I don't know if Zin is the biggest variety as far as acreage goes, but Zin and Chardonnay seem to be comparable in yields.
Actually, the graphic you got there was from 2011, which
Correct,
was the
yes.
lightest crop Zinfandel we've had in forever. And so normally Zinfandel is about 20% more than Chardonnay in the district.
Oh, that's interesting. But still, I mean, I was surprised. The reason I have this graphic up, Chardonnay, very, very close to Zinfandel and significantly higher. It's still significantly higher than Cabernet. Really important variety in the region, and yet not something that you see a lot of. Lodi Appellations Chardonnay.
Yeah, you don't see it on the label, but you see it in a lot of labels.
And I think, part of that speaks to the wineries and their kind of way of differentiating themselves in the market. And there are a lot of Chardonnays out on the shelves, and a lot of our smaller producers have focused in on some of the niche varieties to distinguish themselves and kind of, set themselves apart instead of doing a Chardonnay or a Merlot or something like that.
As Tim alluded to, a lot of the Chardonnay, a lot of the Petite Syrah ends up blending into other wines, adding some oomph or some structure, some spice, or that's the reason why.
Yeah, there's definitely demand for the Chardonnay grapes in the area.
I would imagine so.
We have wineries all over California that come here to purchase grapes, and we always say we're the industry's best kept secret. So they like to keep it that way.
It's not really it shouldn't be a best kept secret, but definitely we're going to run out of time fairly soon. I definitely want to touch on the Certified Green Lodi Rules program. We touched on it earlier, but this is the the stamp of approval that you get to display on your bottles. Can you talk a little bit about what this means to people and why people should look for
It's
it?
a fairly comprehensive process, and it's a vineyard certification program that you go through an auditing process. The standards have been vetted by a third party, Protected Harvest, and like I said earlier, we have 20,000 acres in the program. But the grower is being audited on all sorts of practices, from pest management practices. Is he monitoring his vineyard on a weekly basis and keeping records of that? From irrigation management, is he making sure his pumps are operating efficiently? Is he checking his hose? Does he have backflow prevention on when he's pulling water out of the waterways? To all sorts of things, to human resources in terms of, employee training and well-being, so that they're doing things like that. And they're being audited to these practices, and if they pass, they can put that on their grapes and on the bottle of wine that comes from those grapes.
So this really is sort of like a seal that says you're doing things right. It's not organic. It's not, there's no...
It's more comprehensive than organic in many
Yeah.
ways, because it's dealing with other practices, but it allows for synthetic treatments as well as just non-organic treatments. And one of the best things about the program is many of the practices in it are consistent with quality wine growing practices. So when you're certifying your vineyards, you're elevating the quality of your vineyard as well.
I was going to ask a question here, so Advice Sister, another question. Advice Sister A wants to know if there are good places to stay if you visit Lodi. We're in the Lodi Visitor Center, which is actually on the grounds of Wine and Roses, which is an absolutely beautiful place to stay. I would definitely recommend staying here if you're in the area.
It's a 5-star restaurant as well.
And a 5-star restaurant. I had a little thing, little local culture, food, fun. What are things... People, it's really easy. We talk about wine all the time. We could give people a list of wineries to visit all day long, but then it's 5:30, you're done, you get back to the hotel, you're tired, you want to eat, you want to go out, you want to eat, you want to have some fun. What do people...
Downtown Lodi has everything that you'll need. You can just either drive or get dropped off there by a cab. You can walk around... unbelievable Mexican restaurants, and when I'm telling you this guy made us dinner here for some very, very well-known wine writers from England last year, and they have eaten and dined on some of the very best gourmet foods anywhere, and they said it was the best food that they have ever eaten. And it's not your typical stuff. They'll make it right there at your table if you need them to be. And that right next door to them will be the sister for Wine and Roses here, Rosewood Restaurant downtown. And then there's Thursday night farmers markets where you can go get all your fresh ingredients and you can make it yourself. Or you can be led on a tour by the chefs in the area, and they will pick out the ingredients from the farmers markets for your food for that evening. So there's a lot going on here, especially through the summer months.
Vegas Enophile wants to know if you have a guest house.
We actually do have a guest house. We'll just have to sneak you in there, though.
There you go.
Actually, one of the funny stories, though, with Tim, I'll have to conclude on this, is that he jumped both feet into the wine business, and they converted their house into their winery and tasting room, and so him and his wife were living in their water tower for several years. And
we're out of the tower.
Fantastic.
We're out of the tower.
So they definitely have been committed to this, and I think that passion and commitment shows in the quality of the wines and the success they've had.
So just a final point here to sort of wrap things up, We were on this Petite. We didn't really talk about it. Beautiful wine, nice balance. A lot of what I like about Petite, I could drink a lot of this. Pretty a fruity style without being sweet and fruity. It's still got a nice structure to it. Somebody asked food pairings. Do you guys want to venture your food pairings for this, and then I'll throw my food pairing out?
I think it's a good barbecue wine.
It's a good barbecue wine.
And
you've got to be able to pair something with it that won't be overwhelmed by it. That's for sure. It's got to be able to stand on its own.
I would love to see this with something a little gamey, barbecue lamb ribs, something like that. I think it would be just a fantastic match.
Yeah, I just avoid something that's a little sweeter sauce or a spicier sauce because it might bring out some of the bitter components in the wine, but focus in on just good barbecue.
So, Stuart, we mentioned that your family was Saint Amant. You want to give a little plug to the family business and let people know a little bit about Saint Amant, what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, we've been making and growing grapes for now 30, 40 years, and I took over the winemaking from my dad when he passed away in '06, and we've had the fortune of partnering with some great growers here in Lodi. We make 2 Zins from the Moore Fry family, one, our Marion's Vineyard, planted in 1901. They've been a great group of people to work with. Tim asked me, we were just talking before this, he said, "Do you guys have any written contracts on your grape vineyards?" And I said, "No." I said, we got a it's a handshake deal, and it's stronger than any legal document you can put down, and we've had a lot of success working with them, and it's easier to sell a bottle of Lodi wine today than it ever has been, and
Yeah, that's because of people like Stuart, who they've been around for a while. They actually inspired a whole other generation of would-be winemakers to say, well, if they can do it, I think maybe we can do it too. It's something that can be done here. But it takes someone blazing the trail to actually start the process moving forward.
Yeah, my dad, opened one of the first boutique wineries here in Lodi in 1996, and at that time California was going through kind of a boom in grape production, and growers used to always come by and just pick his brain for hours. Well, what should I plant? What should I do? And many of them were our customers at the time, but now they're all wineries themselves. So we had to find new customers.
Things change. All right, so to wrap things up a little bit here as best we can, Lodi, the Lodi story is it's kind of super complex, and we could already touch on some of the most important things in an hour here, but it's all about, it's as much about Old Vine Zin as it is about Sangiovese and Vermentino, and it's about families and fifth generations just as much as it's about individual and people. And when you go to a tasting room, you're served by maybe the owner winemaker.
We're there.
But somebody else maybe is, they've got dirt under their fingernails and dusty boots, because you're not being handled here. You're really experiencing the wine growing, wine making community face to face here. And then the last thing, the biggest takeaway I think, is that Lodi is, sure, it's warm and sunny, maybe more sunny than hot, but it's not the Great Swamp of California. It's not a hot place. It doesn't make wines that are really marked by heat in the heat spike kind of way. It makes wines that are marked by a warm, long, comfortable growing season and lots of sun.
I agree with you. You summed it up the most.
That's my job. So in your job out there, you folks out there, you need to find some of these wines. For better or for worse, you might have to call the visitor center here, maybe get them to send out some of the wines, because a lot of these wines I imagine, really don't reach past California's borders, or if they do, it's sort of spotty markets.
Yeah, but we'll take care of you.
Yeah,
They'll
take care of you.
I have total confidence that they will take care of you. And these wines are absolutely worth trying. It's a region that you should absolutely visit. Your first stop here should be the visitor center, which is open, 9 to 5 typically?
Basically, yeah, 10 to 5, 7
10
days
to
a
5,
week.
7 days a week. And this is unusual. This is not a visitor center where you come in and they tell you, here's a list of places to go. This is a visitor center with a gigantic tasting bar. You can see bottles behind us. The bottles are for sale, a lot of them being poured. This is the first stop on your visit to Lodi, but it's probably an hour and a half stop if you really want to experience everything. And Napa Girl wants to know when I'm coming to Livermore. I don't know when I'm coming to Livermore. I'll put that on my itinerary. I'm still in Lodi.
He's stuck in Lodi.
I'm stuck in Lodi. Glad to be stuck in Lodi. It was a pleasure to have you guys join me. It's been a pleasure to be here. I've just learned so much, and it's really fascinating when you come in and you learn about a place the way I've been able to learn about a place, and all of a sudden the wines make a lot more sense. And for me, that's just it's great to learn about wine.
When we get people to taste them, we usually win them over.
So get tasting, folks. And I think that's it. We're a little bit over time, so we're going to say goodnight. Good night, live from Lodi. See you guys at website, LodiWine.com.
LodiWine.com.
Twitter account, Lodi Wine at Twitter.
Yep.
Facebook, Lodi Wine on Facebook. That's it. So get connected, find out more. It'll totally be worth it. According to Kiersey in the studio in New York, that was fantastic. So on that note, good night. We'll see you guys next time.